Hey Facebook, I quit you a long time ago.
Say that अभी खुदा का वास्ता है मेरी नौकरी जाएगी क्या हो गया है?
वैसे ही कह रहा हूँ. I mean, but I'm on Instagram, so you know, I'm half a sellout. So
Okay, we're live.
Awesome.
Hey Facebook, I quit you a long time ago. Ooh, and came back.
नौकरी जाएगी क्या हो गया है?
वैसे ही कह रहा हूँ. I mean.
Okay, so we're starting.
But
Aruj,
I'm on Instagram, so you know, I'm
Aruj,
half a sellout.
Abdul Qadir, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Kaarvan Crafts Foundation.
Walaikum assalam. Hello.
Facebook, I quit you a long time ago.
ये कहाँ पे चलता है?
क्या हो गया है?
वैसे ही कह रहा हूँ. I mean.
As you know, Covid-19, since the end of last year, has been holding the world at hostage. We are all in quarantine or in isolation or recovering or suffering from it. And I was really hoping to talk to both of you because you guys, they've been frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses. But I think that very little Pakistanis, whether it be a state or society, have really understood how to manage the situation. Locally, here in Pakistan, there's been a lot of frustration because people have either failed to bring out the right sort of equipment. And abroad, I think looking at the West, there have been severe failures in state policy as well as managing of the situation. So Uruj, I'd like to start with you. Uruj Zia is the CEO of MaholMate. MaholMate monitors air quality in 6 cities, Karachi, Quetta, Peshawar, Lahore, Islamabad, and Rawalpindi via 1,000 monitoring points. MaholMate also manufactures reusable FFP3 and N95 masks designed and manufactured in Pakistan using locally sourced materials. Aruj, one of the most impressive things about your reaction was how fast you managed to put it all together. When COVID hit Pakistan, how did you come up with the idea of acting and knowing what to do when there was nothing but panic, whether in state and society, and everybody was like, kuch bhi nahi hoega.
Yeah, we had been working on N95 masks prototype since last year. Basically, what we had, because N95 and air pollution isn't really, unfortunately, going anywhere anytime soon, especially given our government and how they function, you know. So we had been, and the N95 masks that we saw in Pakistan and which we've used as well, they were all made abroad and therefore were expensive, and none of them were reusable as such. So what we did was we decided sometime last year, I think in April or May, let's start working on a prototype. Let's start our research and development on it, and we'll see where it goes. On a mask which is made of locally sourced materials, made and designed locally, and which is reusable as well. So by December, our prototype for the N95 was ready, and then January, May, the pandemic. It wasn't a pandemic at the time. It hit China, and my business partner and I, we have friends in China, so on the ground. So they kept updating us on what was happening, what wasn't happening. We saw how we kept a close eye on how their government was responding to it, and also what the salient points, what essential things were required to keep oneself safe from the pandemic as well. What we saw was that masks were very central. Then we decided to look into masks as well. कि यार आया हमारा N95 वाला prototype would be better for it, or whether we need something else to protect ourselves from this. So our R&D team came up with the FFP3 would be better for protection against the virus. Then by the first week of February, our prototype for the FFP3 was also ready. It was sent for extensive field testing वगैरह. वो सारी reports हमारे पास लोगों से आ गई. Then we sent it for testing to Destro वगैरह, and नहीं उससे पहले we sent it for testing to 5 microbiology labs. who
Wow.
cannot certify, but they can test. And
Yeah.
they passed all their tests there. उसके बाद फिर हमने डेस्टो वगैरह को भेजा है. वहाँ से we
Gee,
got very positive results. So,
yeah.
and here we are. So basically,
Fantastic.
we've been working on
Would,
this for about a year now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Aruj, why do you think it is that you were able to conduct this so quickly, whereas other organizations are still floundering about, or they're still sort of offering the basic, kapde wala mask? Where do you think the failure lies? Is it amongst people in terms of understanding how to manage COVID, or do you think that it was just a panic? Situation caused by state policies, and therefore people just sort of thought kuch nahi hoega, everything will be fine, sab theek ho jayega.
Because see, what I've noticed in Pakistan and the a little over a decade that I've spent over here is that people don't really do their own research. They don't read as such, and so a lot of them will rely majorly on what they hear, and therefore, and a lot of it also comes from the government itself. अब जब आपकी government आपको कह रही है कि this is nothing to worry about, it's just a flu, and only old people will be affected by it, etc. So that is the messaging that is going down. भैया आप हटिए यहाँ से. That is the messaging that is going to go down to the people as well, and that is what they're going to follow. Please
Yeah,
excuse things that are going to set on my head periodically. And तो
that's all right.
जब हाँ जबकि आपके प्राइम मिनिस्टर आपको कह रहे हैं कि जी इट्स जस्ट अ फ्लू, so that is what people are hearing. When your president is saying कि you can cough into your hands instead of into your elbow or into
Yeah,
something disposable, and how to dispose of it properly. And then we had to go around telling people, no, this is not correct, the
bilkul.
president is wrong, and this is how you do it actually. It just makes more work for people on the ground. And I think
Yeah,
government
absolutely.
messaging has failed, government
Kader,
communication has failed.
Ji, Kader, you are Director HR, Internal Communications and Admin for Pure Health, which is the largest lab operating in the Gulf. It works in hardware, diagnostic lab operations, and information systems. You are running up to 40 to 50,000 COVID-related tests per day. Now, have you,
Yep.
and in your case, was it similar to Aruja's situation where she literally had to take matters into her own hands and do things her way because there was very little awareness and very little support by state and society? How was it for you in the UAE?
In the UAE, like I said, Meher, the response was absolutely stellar. We basically are partners with the Ministry of Health. And
Right.
about 3 to 4 years ago, I'll tell you about the journey, essentially, how we ended up here. So about 3 years ago, the ministry told us to run all their labs. And
Right.
that's about more than 120 labs that we're running. This
Yeah.
is pre-corona, this is pre-everything.
Sure.
By January, to an extent, the alarm bells had started to be raised. The vast majority of the UAE population is you're either tourists or you're expats. So there's a lot of very frequent mobility between countries. Dubai airport being one of the largest airports in the world. Essentially, what happened was that sometime in February, it had reached the state where that realization was there that, okay, this is not something that's normal. This is out of the normal.
Yeah.
We actually, the how we came here was we prepped a full solution for the government of the UAE in 6 hours.
When COVID came to the UAE, did you immediately think that we need to set up a testing unit, or did you think that, oh great, now we need to do this, we're on our own, which is what it was for Uruj. It was like, we're on our own, how are we going to do this?
No, I
Was
mean,
it easy?
I'd say the massive advantage compared to Uruj, I mean, what Uruj is doing is absolutely stellar because that's an individual making a change.
Yeah.
With me, I had the government backing me. I have an entire organization backing me. I've got 500 healthcare professionals working for me. But specifically, the people that you need to run COVID tests are molecular scientists, biologists, and microbiologists. So, of course, the labs that we had, they were never really focused too much on molecular and micro. In 6 hours, we gave the government of the UAE a solution, and in 6 hours, our teams were deployed at Dubai airport, and that's where the screening started. Now, during this time,
Amazing.
we also had to scale up. Now, when we started, we were about at roughly 4,000 to 5,000 tests per day. Uh, in
Okay.
the meantime, what we did was we set up dedicated labs. Now, one of our labs, actually, as of today, is hitting the 50,000 test mark. And we've
Yeah.
got two other labs. So we're trying to do as much as we can on that front.
Sure.
Right now, the UAE is, I think, the highest in terms of per capita testing. And
Wow.
that's largely because of the Ministry of Health, DOH, the Department of Health, DHA, the Dubai Health Authority. So it's actually wonderful to see everybody working together, all these entities, organizations. You've got the Federal Authority for Immigration and Citizenship working on this. You've got the National Crisis Management and Disaster Association working on this. You've got, of course, the Ministry of Health, which is by proxy us, uh, Department of Health, the Abu Dhabi Health Authority. So it's been taken very, very seriously. The numbers were down. It took quite a long time for the numbers to start coming up.
Sure.
I think it was also one of those things, it was only a matter of time. Uh, all of us do get afflicted by it because it's a virus. It
Yeah.
has to run its course.
It has
And
to. But you see, here's my question. Aruj, this is for you specifically. UNICEF has released a report that says that there are millions of children in South Asia. Women as well are at risk, but children in particular are at risk. And obviously by South Asia, we know that Pakistan is going to be a hotbed for those children.
Yes.
I mean, what do you think the solution to managing this what is clearly a humanitarian disaster is going to be? Are masks and PPP suits the way forward, or does the state finally need to collaborate with organizations such as Mahal Made to have a wider impact?
Uh, it does, of course, it does. And
Yeah.
see, for children, I think the primary, because they so far the further research, they are not as affected by the virus itself as adults are. But
Yeah.
I think the bigger issue for children would be probably caretakers, because if the parents get ill, or if the elders in the house get ill, who the hell is going to take care of the children? And for example, and if there's a
Exactly.
lockdown, for example, and these are children, yeah, say hello, and these are children of daily wagers, for example,
Hi.
they are
Yeah.
not going to school right now. Schools are closed, and if parents are not getting work, parents are not getting paid, how are they going to get food? How are they going to get basic education which they were getting at the schools? How
Yeah.
are they going to get any exposure to the world outside the four walls of their houses? So their lives are
Yeah.
at a standstill right now. And in one sense, their lives are at a standstill, and in another sense, life is just passing them by. Because if the situation is going to stay where it is for at least a year, because a vaccine, even if it is ready in terms of tests and everything by the end of this year, it'll take several more months to get to the market. So we
Yeah.
have the situation which is going to stay here at least a year. You have inequality of access. For example, my kid has access to the internet, has access to a million and one things which he can use for learning, which he can use for many things. Right? My kid has access to socialization in a way that probably the child of, say, a daily wager will not have.
Oh,
And that
and
difference
yeah.
of access, for example, is going to be widened during this time. You're going to see it more starkly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And disparity is going to, that disparity gap is just going to widen even further. And this is where I feel that women, particularly those of low income, they suffer more because they lose out on an income. They have to stay at home. But then again, whatever income they had that supplemented, the running of the house, उससे भी वो भी पैसे चले जाते हैं, बच्चों को भी नुकसान होता है, औरतों को भी नुकसान होता है, and it I feel that it places more of a burden on men. Kader, in your testing centers, have you seen more men coming to the fore or more women? Because repeatedly in Europe and in Pakistan as well, people keep saying that there are more male affectees compared to females. Would you say that's true in the UAE? And the excuse that's always given is कि मर जाते हैं जी कमाने के लिए, which I personally
Yeah, I hear you.
I can't say anything.
I'll give you
I
my
mean?
take on it. This is an opinion, by the way, but I'll give you my take on it. I think the reason men are getting afflicted more is because we're filthy buggers. We don't wash our hands. We don't believe in those things. We're fundamentally, I think, overcome by machismo, and we're just like, oh, kuch nahi hota yaar, kuch nahi hota. Men are, I guess what you can say is you have to look at places where the socialization of that virus is going to take place.
Yeah.
If you look at the cross section of any country, let's say hypothetically, of course, I'm not saying this is a fact. Let's say there are more men working in a particular country than women are, right? So
Sure.
obviously, socialization is going to increase. Once socialization increases, but at the same time, the problem is that the problem is actually, sorry, the asymptomatic carriers. Kids, the reason that they've cut schools is because kids are carriers. It doesn't particularly affect kids. But that being said, the issue is that you can't really hold the WHO, the CDC, or anyone who's working in infection control responsible for the statements that they're making, because this virus is incredibly smart. It's constantly evolving. It mutates like any other virus does. I think the onus should most definitely be on primarily education, because you need immunity. And you should at least have basic access to things like, for instance, a daily dose of vitamin C and D. Hygiene should be practiced. Do stick to social distancing and all that, of course. Masks are primarily there to protect other people from you. We've also now started, so now what we've also started doing is, roughly about a week ago, we started doing the antibody tests as well. The difference between the PCR nasal swab, which hurts when they jam it up your brain, and the PCR is the antibody test is that the antibody test is a blood draw. We had 4 people at my office who were corona positive. 3 of them 0 symptoms, chilled out, watched Bollywood movies, had the time of their lives. One of the guys freaked out, of course, because he wasn't doing too well. He had to be hospitalized. But essentially, the thing is that when we ran the antibody tests, because of course we had to calibrate our machines based on those values. So they took the blood samples from the recovered people versus people like me who haven't had it as yet. So with me, I have 0 antibodies. But the people that recovered had incredibly high antibodies. Now, theoretically, having high antibodies means that you would be immune to it at least for the next few months to a year. But then again, this is something that not many people know about, because there are cases of people getting re-afflicted. So we're not really clear whether this is mutating, whether it's the same thing, whether the antibodies are there, whether they're useful. But it's like Aruj said, I mean, even developing a vaccine and bringing it to market and then providing access, I think this is going to stay on for a while. This is the new normal, as they say.
I mean, I keep hearing about access to the vaccination, when it's going to be available in the market. And one of the things that really strikes me is nobody's talking about access to things like clean water, accessibility of hygiene. Nobody's talking about that. I mean, Aruj, I'd like to ask you this. In a city like Karachi, where already there is a water shortage problem, and yet they keep saying things like wash your hands, wash your face, wash your clothes, wash this, wash that. What are you going to do when there's no water? There's no water for cooking, for drinking. Muha to done dur ki cheez hai. I mean, is this something that Mahal Mate would like to address at some point?
We are not as a company, but my business partner did work on this, not for Karachi, but for border areas of Balochistan, like the areas
Okay,
which
nice.
border Afghanistan. Because while
Yeah,
Karachi has a water shortage problem, those are areas that have a no water problem. Like they don't have water at all. So what they did was, the WHO, I think, had provided a recipe sort of thing
yeah,
for making hand sanitizers at home.
yeah.
So he got them. He got those made by folks who would know what they were doing, and those were distributed to the areas that had no water. Now, individuals can do some of this. Organizations can do a little more of this, but this is really the government's responsibility. The
Absolutely.
government has the kind of infrastructure and range of access to be able to solve this problem,
Yeah,
because there's if there's no water, the alternative is to use hand sanitizer. It's not ideal, but neither is having no water. So
no,
the government should at least be working with organizations. If it can't do this on its own, then it should be working with organizations which are doing it. And I know of organizations which are trying to do this. And it is the government's job to work with them and provide them access to places where their products could reach. Maybe the government could, subsidize it, something or the other. And because uh, individuals do not have the kind of access to be able to solve a whole country's problems.
absolutely. Of course
Even
not.
organizations like ours, while we would have greater access than individuals, but even we cannot solve an entire country's problem. We do not have the kind of budget that the government does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting things in the UNICEF report was in terms of issues that South Asia needed to look at. And again, they say South Asia, but I'm asking this in the context of Pakistan, was that people need to work with religious leaders and other partners to address the myths and hate speech that the pandemic has given rise to. Kader, you know, I'd like to hear your take on this. Has your organization had to work with religious leaders? And
Uh,
do you feel that it's been helpful? Did you need it?
uh, I'll tell you something very interesting. So
Here we go.
when there's a call to prayer, right?
Yeah.
It's Hayya al Salah. That's what they
Huh.
say.
Yeah.
Means come for prayer. In the UAE, they've changed that line in the prayer, in the
Yeah.
azan, which is basically do pray at home. So yeah, I mean, yeah. So I see. Okay, this might be a little controversial what I'm saying right now, but generally, my
सामने मैं रहती हूँ मेरे भाई याद रखना.
Because we live
so
here,
my issue is Pakistan ने इस्लाम का ठेका नहीं उठाया हुआ.
Yeah.
ठीक है, but we would like to think that that's what we do. That's what I've mentioned in my book as well, which is where essentially, well, something else to talk about. But essentially, the thing is that everyone, it's for the greater good. This is something that transcends religion. It's something that transcends race. It transcends everything. The virus is not going to care whether you're black or white or Pakistani or American or any. It's just going to hit you when it hits you.
Oh,
Um, uh, taking there is a positive side to taking the religious parties on board in Pakistan, because the religious parties actually do hold a lot of sway. So if
yeah.
you can convince them, they can be very instrumental in educating the people that are fundamentally following them. But
Yeah.
education in that regard is very, very important. I mean, I remember there was an incident many years ago in Peshawar when a whole bunch of people were shot up by the Taliban because they were responsible for polio vaccines.
Yes.
So buying into propaganda, that element of education, all of that's very important. Something as simple and trivial as vitamin C every day can really go a long way in saving your life. And
Absolutely.
when you think about it, there is how much access to vitamin C does rural Pakistan have? I'm sure you, myself, Rouge, we represent what, 2 to 3% of Pakistan, um,
1%.
or 1% for that matter.
Yeah.
In rural area, I was speaking to a cousin of mine, for instance, and he went to the village, and he's like, those people just think that this is a conspiracy. There is no corona.
Huh.
And
Huh.
but I was speaking to my father as well, and I was like, maybe it isn't as bad as they're saying it is. And my father said that it's initially, because I remember in Pakistan the cases weren't that high, but that was primarily because there wasn't much testing going on. But
Yeah.
now that, to an extent, testing has started to take place, you realize that the problem is quite bad. I was talking to a friend of mine in India, and they're still under lockdown. They're still on only essential services.
Yeah.
So, religious parties can play a very pivotal role,
Yes.
provided they're actually spreading the right message.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's the fact of the matter is, I'm sure Allah Ta'ala is going to be fairly lenient if you miss a Jummah because you don't want to infect 250 people at a particular mosque. So
No.
if for instance, over here, the general direction, the call to prayer tells you that guys pray at home.
Huh.
Don't convene in one place. And but
Yeah.
having said that, life is back to normal here, alhamdulillah. Everything's open, restaurants are open. You still have to function with certain rules that you only have to have like 50% capacity, 70% capacity. Offices are back to 100% capacity. And
Absolutely.
at least over here, the government's doing a lot to bolster that confidence, not just in the people that are living here, the expats that are working here, but also for the tourists that are planning to come and visit as well. Of course, the pandemic has caused a lot of companies to change their business models. I have a very near and dear friend, and she works at an architecture consultancy. And those guys, what they're doing is they're taking a proactive stance, and they're planning on redesigning an entire office layout based on that. I'm just going to give them a shout out, plug them in. They're called Ad Design on Instagram. And what they're doing is they are looking ahead and they're saying that, listen, we've come to realize that not too many people are actually required to be physically present in the office to work.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's just change the way we work. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, I would most definitely say that by not being in Pakistan, of course, I'm far away from the problems at the grassroots level. All I get to hear about is what I hear about when I speak to you or my friends or my family,
Yeah.
or whatever when I follow the news. But you guys, especially Rouge, you guys are on ground, so you're
Definitely.
always in a better position to
Definitely.
talk about that.
Definitely. Rouge, what's interesting to me is here at Kaarvan, we work with rural artisans, mostly based in South Asia. And unfortunately, a lot of them have been very badly affected because they cannot leave their homes. वो बाजार नहीं जा सकती, वो धागे नहीं ले सकती, वो सुइयों नहीं ले सकती, काम नहीं कर सकती अपना जो वो करती थी हाथ के कढ़ाई वगैरह का. Um, what really strikes me, and again, this is one of those moments is when people say, Kiji, oh, women have had it so easy because they're sitting at home now. When in fact, in a recent webinar, we were discussing the effects of COVID on women, and it turned out that there are going to be millions, I mean, millions of unwanted pregnancies in Pakistan. The workload on women has increased tenfold, literally tenfold. And they're also facing a lot of economic struggles because they've lost out on work. I'd love to know your thoughts on it, and why is there this widespread ignorance कि औरतें तुझे बड़ी खुश हैं घर पे बैठ के, when we're not.
Uh, I really don't understand this cognitive dissonance that people have and why they continue to insist on this कि जी खवातीन तो बहुत खुश होंगी घर पे बैठे हुए.
बहुत खुश है, हाँ
Because
जी.
it is so obvious that, for example, if someone is in an abusive domestic situation. Now, prior to this, the abuser was at least going out to work, and here we are assuming that the woman is not allowed to work outside the house because that is what happens in most of these situations. So the abuser was at least going out of the house to work like 8 to 10 hours a day. So she could be free from that nonsense for at least that time period. Now with the lockdowns and with stay at home policies and everything, she is locked in place with that person 24/7. You cannot begin to imagine what she would go through locked in that space with that person 24/7. It's horrible. We are not, I don't know if any organization is actually counting the reports, if any reports have come out about this, or if anyone is counting police reports or privately reported, or if the number of deaths have increased, the number of injuries have increased. We don't really know. No one is counting. I don't understand why. We don't see, even though abuse is so common over here, we just
Yeah,
refuse to see it. We just refuse to acknowledge it. I don't understand why.
I don't understand why. I
I
fail
mean,
to understand. Kadir, go
I'd
ahead,
like,
please.
yeah, I'd like to add to that. I mean, it's actually something that's not just limited to abuse. I'd say that it's much tougher on women as well, because uh, for the large part, you've got kids at home, and most families do, at least even if it's at a basic level, they try to educate their kids. And the way that this has been hit now, it's a different story altogether. Making sure that your kids study at home. Now,
Yeah.
add to that the pressure of uh, potentially, let's say, in that particular situation, a spouse that's abusive, and you're talking about nuclear family setups where mother-in-laws are there and everything is there. So it has to be very, very difficult.
But Kadir, there are other issues as well. Domestic abuse, marital
Yeah,
rape,
most definitely.
unwanted pregnancies, um, limited access to healthcare, whether it be a hospital, even for basic things,
Yes,
sanitary
prior to
towels,
this,
medicine, Panadol, very basic
prior to
things.
this, what
Go
I
ahead,
had
Uruj.
learned a few years ago was that abortion is actually the primary form of birth control in Pakistan. And in the age group that gets abortions, the primary age group is older women who already have 3 to 4 kids, who are married, who are in you know uh, halal relationships. So, and I'm assuming that those were unwanted pregnancies which the women did not want, which were forced on them, and therefore they were able to go to these small organizations that function which provide access to safe abortions, and they were able to get rid of those unwanted pregnancies. But with everything shut down right now, and what are they going to do? They're going to be forced to carry those pregnancies to term, and I don't have the words. Horrible.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's horrific. And I suppose these are the millions of children that will also face severe malnutrition, severe lack of education that the UNICEF report had to say. Um, in this respect, Kadir, has your organization offered any medical support to women who might be sufferers of corona or who might have problems in terms of accessing healthcare?
So in terms of accessing healthcare, what we're doing is one of the first things that we did. Well, one of the reasons the company that I work for is incredibly agile is because we don't really work in the roles that we work in.
Yeah,
I'm human resources, but I spent all of March and all of April and all of May, to be honest, setting up field hospitals and field testing sites. So we
yeah,
have, in case people can't really access labs, we've set up labs, mobile, well, not mobile, we've set up field labs in cities and in the outskirts of the Emirates as well. So right now we've
yeah,
got about 3 field testing sites in Abu Dhabi. We've got a few in Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, in Al Ain, and what we're basically doing is we're just trying to take testing to the masses rather than having them come to us. We've
sure.
launched an internet portal, which we're trying to integrate internationally with different labs across the world right now, so that if you have to come into the UAE, that portal is going to make you partner with your local lab. For instance, if you're in the Ukraine, It's going to identify where you can get your test done so that you can fly in. So, like I said, I mean, I can give you the lowdown on how a developed economy is taking care of this, and Rooj can give you the
Yes.
lowdown on the challenges faced by a developing economy.
Yeah. Well, not just developing economy, literally, I mean, our economy stands still and the government has clearly proven it's unable in managing it. And that's why when I look at Arooj's work, oh, you know, it's incredible that on an individual level, she's been able to do this. Arooj, at some point, do you think Mahal Mate will expand into offering tests as well, or mobile tests across Karachi, if not all of the other cities
Uh,
where you have a presence?
that's not really on the cards right now, but I am personally in touch with folks who manufacture those tests. And, if someone comes to me and says that they need access to those tests, for example, if someone from a clinic comes to me, or if a doctor wants to do those at home, so I put them in touch directly with those vendors on my phone.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Do
no,
you
I
think
don't
that
think we have the capacity to take this door to door.
at some point you would like to publish your findings that you found through MaholMate? I know that you're constantly updating it on social media, but
We might. Let's just let everything stabilize abuse ke baad फिर, because right now everything has been turned upside down. And,
yeah.
we had to fast forward a lot of things that we were doing, we had planned for later. And then a lot of things that we had planned for now have had to be postponed for later. So I think in a couple of months we'll be in a better position to be able to figure out where we're going to take this, and what findings we can publish, which ones we cannot publish, because also work under क्या होता है वो, what agreements are those where you are not allowed to tell things? I can't recall that.
Confidentiality.
Haan, so
NDAs.
we are also working under those kinds of agreements. So, you know, there's some
Yeah.
info that we can publish, some that we cannot publish. So we'll have to figure that out.
But Aruj, the way things are going in Pakistan, I mean, we've already had one case that I know of. There may be more, but the one case that I know of a reinfection of corona. So, I mean, are we looking at the curve sort of continuing, rising upwards, or it's not going to
Yeah.
stabilize anytime soon, is it?
Yeah, until mid-August or the first week of September, approximately, it is going to continue to rise. Because
Yeah.
if no measures are taken by the government, if lockdowns are not imposed properly. For example, right now, supposedly my area in Karachi is under lockdown. But
Okay.
what they've done is कि मेरी गली के end पर एक तंबू लगा दिया उन्होंने, which
Ah,
makes access very difficult for people like me, because these days I have to use a wheelchair outdoors if I'm going outside. So, I cannot step out of my gully, but everyone can come in. Like, I am sending out deliveries are coming to me, work is continuing. So these lockdowns are not really effective. And unless the government starts to take this seriously, the curve is going to continue to rise at least until September. And that is at least. So,
ah.
yeah.
Bilkul, absolutely. Kadir, in that respect, do you think that at some point you, Pure Health, would like to expand their operations into Pakistan? Because, I mean, you just heard Aruj describe the lockdown situation, and it's not going to end anytime soon. And I speak as a parent when I see what's happening in Lahore, for example, where supposedly there's a lockdown, but शादियां हो रही हैं,
Yeah.
खाने हो रहे हैं, दावतें हो रही
Dude, I've
हैं.
got friends that are still going out playing golf. I mean,
So,
मैं क्या करूं?
do you think that at some point Pure Health would like to expand its operations in Pakistan?
I mean, that's something that I can't personally comment on because that's more of a management decision. But at this particular point in time, I think every country, whatever they're doing, they're having challenges meeting local demand. In terms
Yes.
of the numbers going up, numbers I personally believe will continue to go up till the end of the year because it's sheer probability. Because the more people you test, the more you'll find out. There's a large segment of the population that's untested right now, and globally, to an extent, now what's going on is that governments are actually resorting to testing only symptomatic people. So if you're asymptomatic, if you're fine, you're fine. Just observe social distancing and all of that. Uh, I don't even know, to be honest, given the lack of specificity of the information or the validity of the information which the WHO gives and whatnot, nobody really knows too much about this. So I don't know if the heat is going to kill it, that because we're not done with the first wave as yet. And
No, that's frightening. That's
Delhi
frightening.
hasn't killed it. I mean, Karachi is burning right now. Is you step outside and and it's on fire, and we are still getting infections and the rate is still going up. It's not
yeah,
stopping. It's
it's
not
the same
stopping.
over here. It's the same over
Huh.
here. I mean, it's high humidity, high temperature, all of that, but we still have cases that are coming up positive as well. The complications, though, I mean, this is a bit of a tangent. The complications, though, are because if your immune system, the one thing that's basically central, which everyone seems to agree on, is that it will hit you badly if you're obese, because obesity in general would
Oh
mean
no, don't say
that you
that.
have underlying health conditions.
I tried very hard to
No,
hide
no,
my triple chin. I'm stretching my neck out a lot.
no, I absolutely don't mean it like that. But in general, being overweight means that you have something that's not working 100%.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I have my teammate, actually, lovely girl by the name of Mira. So she became a mother recently, and uh, after about, I think her baby's about 4 months old or 5 months old, so she got afflicted, and
Oh no,
obviously, so she still hadn't lost the baby fat, all of that,
God.
and hers progressed into pneumonia. And because of that, she had to be hospitalized. Now, she's tested negative, but she's still carrying pneumonia. And the doctor said that she will be carrying pneumonia at least for the next 6 months. So, underlying health conditions, you have to be very, very careful. Old age, you have to be very, very careful. It comes down to the simplest things once again, just immunity. You should just get a good night's rest. You need to be up on your vitamin C. Vitamin D is incredibly, incredibly important as well.
Yeah,
And but I don't think on a rational, practical, statistical level, I think the numbers are going to go up, because with time, you're just going to start covering more of the population.
absolutely.
Historically, pandemics have taken years to be diffused. So what happens in the case of a virus is that once it's released at a large scale in the human population, sooner or later it's going to start coming across people who have very good immunity. Now, biological imperative, right? Animals, human beings, viruses, all of is the plural for viruses, viruses or viri.
My Bhatni, this
Why
isn't an
right?
English lesson. Sorry,
This is
what is it?
Why right? I think
Why
it's
viri.
right?
Okay. I stand corrected. Thank you, madam. Um, but in general, the thing is that once it comes across a certain segment of the population where immunity is just generally strong,
Yeah,
uh, the virus will become weaker and weaker. So the strain that's going to be transmitted is going to be a weaker strain. And
yeah.
in February, my chief medical officer, brilliant guy, he basically told me back in February that you can think of this as a weaker strain of this as replacing the common flu. So this will become the new flu once it becomes a little weaker.
That's not, very
Not
comforting.
encouraging.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not. It's not. But that's
especially if I have
it's
a child with respiratory problems, as you know.
it is an issue. It is an issue, most definitely. I mean, I'm a smoker. I've probably had like 3 cigarettes already, but so it does freak me out too.
Yeah,
But realistically speaking, I do tend to think that we just need to ride this one out. It's
yeah,
difficult. It's got so many other implications. a lot of the implications you and Aruj were discussing with regards to women, with regards to the economy, with regards to businesses. There's just many primary and secondary problems associated with it right now. And but a government's role is absolutely essential in taking care of its people, if not to modernize, at least to adjust to what's really going on.
Bilkul, bilkul. Aruj, we're nearing the end now. Where do you see yourself taking Mahal Mate? I know that you won an award recently. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So
But
congratulations.
where do you see Mahal Mate going, given that Pakistan is realistically looking at it? We are a disaster if we haven't become one yet.
Yeah. Yeah, once the pandemic passes, we are going to switch to primarily manufacturing N95 masks, which was our
Yeah,
original plan.
sure.
That will happen. फिर हमारा जो air quality monitoring का जो है, that has several phases that have to be implemented. This ये जो static monitoring points जो हैं हमारे, this was only the first phase. There are several more phases which have to be implemented. So we're going to go get started working on those, because those have had to be put on hold because folks can't really travel from one place to another right now. It's not safe. And
Huh,
well, I'm immunocompromised and high risk, so I cannot be infected. So I have basically been locked up at home until we have a vaccine or something. So a lot of things, a lot of those plans have been put on hold. Those will be reactivated once all of this passes. And yeah,
yeah.
that's I think about it.
Okay. Kader, where does Pure Health go? I mean, are you going to continue testing, or are you going to look into research for COVID?
Research is going on in parallel, of course. I mean,
Okay,
we're a
wonderful.
healthcare, so that goes without saying.
Yeah,
But right now, we're absolutely at the front line. We're at all the airports. We're in your cities. We have labs. We have also partnered with a lot of corporations. We are testing the police. We are testing ADNOC. We are testing almost anyone and everyone who is willing to do that.
yeah,
But the entire model for disaster management, I think, needs to change. It's just, especially in Pakistan, because whatever I do read, I the conclusion that I reach is it's not a question of the capacity to test as much as it is a question of how much bureaucracy you have to go through in order to get tested. Uh,
yeah.
then, of course, yeah, no one's going to shy away from making a quick buck during
They're
such a
selling
situation.
plasma, exploiting
I
that
mean,
market as well.
yeah, I mean, I heard that face masks, when this came out, the prices went absolutely through the roof.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just,
They're still on shelves for like 2,500 each, and they're disposable. Like
wow.
how? You know, you just
Hi.
see
I mean,
pictures
listen,
and I hear about them, and I have no words.
Yeah.
I mean, see, because this is what I absolutely don't understand. Because face masks should be free. I mean, realistically speaking, it's the same opinion I have on feminine hygiene products as well. It's essential;
Yeah,
they should be free. So these are things that are going to impact your entire population from a healthcare perspective. So
absolutely.
this is stuff that the government absolutely needs to step in to take care of. We see the military act very proactively in Pakistan whenever there's a disaster. The military, on many levels, like them or not, they're always at the forefront of taking care of disaster recovery and all of that. But and given the fact that the military probably has the most developed infrastructure in terms of healthcare, so I'd
Yeah.
really like to see how they're coming in and stepping in to take care of the people.
I'd like to
They're
know,
buying
I mean, and I
PPEs and
put this
masks
question
from
to
me,
you.
so
Sorry, Aruj, go ahead.
uh, talk about the military. They're buying PPEs and PPE coveralls and masks from me, so that should tell you a lot about how prepared they are.
Yes, Bilkul. But it's
And CMEs
interesting. I mean,
वगैरह are overflowing as well, and there have been massive rates of infections. amongst their ranks as well. And CMH वगैरह everywhere are overflowing. There's no space.
There's no space. But what's interesting to me is that both of you, and I throw this question out, I'm playing devil's advocate here, so don't crib about me on social media, oh hi, what an evil person she turned out to be. Both of you are active in urban areas. How do you propose, and this is just an idea that I want you to explore, how do you propose on taking, Aruj, what you're doing, and Kader, what you're doing, as in manufacturing safety materials and conducting tests, to the rural areas, जहाँ पे लोगों को पता भी नहीं है कि कोरोना कोई चीज़ है, टीवी पे अगर वो देखते भी हैं या रेडियो पे सुनते हैं या किसी ने अखबार पढ़ के बता भी दी, they just think कि अच्छा जी कोरोना हो गया. It's like as if saying कि जी वो चिड़ी आई सी सिर पे बैठ करके चली गई. That's how they see
Yeah,
corona.
उसमें I would say कि the model that we're following is not very difficult to replicate in Pakistan.
Yeah.
What you need is a lab. You need a mobile testing unit. You need a sample collection team, and you need a lab that's going to process those results, run those tests, and give you those results as soon as they can. Given that, large-scale education of the population with regards to what isolation means, कि ये सब कुछ यहूदी साजिश नहीं है, and essentially awareness and social distancing and all of these things.
Awareness
This is
is
very,
crucial.
very important. The model
Aruj,
can be replicated. It's not rocket science.
Aruj, how would you suppose we take it to what you're doing to the urban area, to the rural areas?
Yes, what we do is that apart from the main line of masks that we have right now, which are made of medical grade fabric, we are also simultaneously working on decorative masks, which look nicer, less medical. Like they're made of the same materials, but they have their outer covering, for example, looks nicer. Those coverings are being made. उसमें जो कढ़ाई है, उसमें जो सारा काम है, we get those made through women artisans in rural areas. There's this other business of mine where I have these bags and wallets which are made by women artisans from rural areas. So we utilize the same workforce, and we brought them here. We brought them over to this the mask thing, and that is what they've been doing. And Satsa, because they are working on it, so they're also given a lot of information कि ये आप बना रहे हैं, ये इस चीज़ के लिए बन रहा है, ये इसका ये फायदा है, वगैरह वगैरह. Apart from that, I also get because I've been processing orders and everything myself right now. So for the mask, so we've also been getting a lot of orders from rural areas.
Okay.
Like
Got it.
from urban areas to major cities to हैं ही, which is Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, Quetta, Peshawar, वगैरह major cities हैं ही, but a lot of orders from rural areas too. So I think information is slowly starting to trickle down to places.
Absolutely. And why not? I mean, at Kaarvan, we have a slogan here that no family should be left behind. And that's what we've tried to do in our own fundraising as well. The only problem is with fundraising, as you guys know, cash handout can only take you so far. A longer strategy is required. But we're at the end of our session. I've taken up far more of your time than I had said initially. Please excuse me for that. But thank you so much for joining in, Aruj and Kadir. I really, really appreciate you guys taking time out. I know, Aruj, it's quite late and you have a little boy to look after. And Kadir, aapki to bhi khair raat shuru hui hogi, but you do have work.
Well, lockdown's finished, so.
Lockdown's finished. Yes,
Oh,
yes.
it's
We're
my
still
weekend,
trying
so
to
yeah.
implement. You're too old now. But thank
Yeah,
you guys.
that's true.
Thank you so much, you guys, for being here. Aruj, I wish
Thank
you the
you
very
for
best
having me.
with Mall Mate. If Kaarvan can ever assist in any way, please let us know.
Yes,
Kadir,
that would be
likewise.
awesome.
Thank you so
Pure
much.
health. Well done on setting it up, and more power to you. Again, if you ever want to branch out in Pakistan, Kaarvan is here. Thank you, guys. Look after yourselves. Please stay safe, and we'll be in touch.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Take care. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.